I know you are in Georgia right now. You're about to get on a bus tour of the Blue Wall states, including your own home state of Pennsylvania. I want to start with this new polling that continues to show an even tighter presidential race than what we were seeing even just a week ago. There are some Democrats being very vocal, others speaking on background, but they're worried about Harris's momentum. They think the race is plateaued. They're concerned voters still don't see how she's different than President Biden. What do you think?
Well, look, Jessica, in Pennsylvania, the last two presidential races have come down to 44,000 votes and 80,000 votes, representing about a point or less. So it shouldn't shock anyone that the polls are within a point or so, or even a dead heat. These are close races, but the stakes are incredibly high. The contrast is clear. And I'll tell you what, I would much rather be us than them. I think we've got momentum. And look, I'm a sports guy. I would much rather have our team on the floor for the final 2 minutes of the game, standing with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
I want to ask you about the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because I just think so many eyes are on that state. We know that it's going to likely be make or break. You mentioned just how close the last two presidential elections were. You won in your race in 2022 with the most votes ever for a Pennsylvania statewide candidate. A lot of people look to you as a model for how to win that state. Now, you were running against a candidate that was pretty weak, but nonetheless, you did quite well, a record amount of votes. What does the Harris coalition look like? How does she ensure that she wins Pennsylvania?
Well, just two things. One is I was running against an extreme candidate who was Donald Trump's offspring. And I would note that Donald Trump and his offspring have lost every race since 2016 in Pennsylvania, every statewide race. And by the way, even some races for school board and local races. So they don't have a particularly strong track record in Pennsylvania. But it is true that their races for president tend to be a lot closer in our Commonwealth. Kamala Harris just needs to keep doing exactly what she's doing, which is showing up in communities that are oftentimes ignored and left behind, forgotten areas that, in the past had maybe been flyover areas for national candidates. She's showing up. She's answering questions. She's looking folks in the eye and kind of letting people kick the tires. We're a big state, but we're still a retail state. I think she's doing what she needs to do. I joked with her the other day when I saw her Pennsylvania. I think she had been in our Commonwealth something like 4.5 out of the 7 days that week. She's returning weekly. Governor Walz has been in Pennsylvania quite a bit. So they're spending a lot of time, a lot of focus, a lot of energy on Pennsylvania. And I think they're showing up in the right areas.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that strategy of them going into a lot of red Pennsylvania, rural areas, maybe places Democrats haven't always gone, because for a long time the playback book for Democrats in Pennsylvania is just run up the score big time in the cities and just don't get clobbered in the places kind of in the middle of the state, more or less. Do you think that this is actually effective? Do you think that she can move the needle enough to make that marginal difference to win?
I do, and she is. And again, I'd rather be us than them. I don't think anybody should get freaked out by the fact that the polls are close. Of course they were going to be close. The election results the last couple of times have been really close. Again, a point or less. And so I think what folks need to do is not worry about what those polls show, but just keep working. And what I'm seeing on the ground is real enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. Folks not only pledging to vote for her, or maybe even some have voted for her by mail already, but they're showing up at the local office and taking a shift and going out and knocking on doors. In rural areas where maybe Democrats haven't performed as well in the past, they're taking a lawn sign. They're putting it on their lawn. They're hanging it on their barns, and they're really giving a permission slip to their friends and their neighbors. That's big, and that momentum, that energy is something that's worth a little bit at the end here, and that's why, as I said before, I'd much rather be us than them.
And we've seen Republicans cutting into Democrats' advantage of registering voters in Pennsylvania over the last few years. So Republicans have increased their registered voters by a point, but Democrats have seen a decrease by 4 points since 2020. As we keep saying, in a state that's likely going to be won on the margins, this would appear as a worrisome data point for Democrats. Is it?
Again, the data is close, but let's look at the real-time outcomes, right? In the race for governor, in the race for U.S. Senate, in the race for president in 2020, every time since 2016, Donald Trump or one of his political offspring have been on the ballot, they've lost. Because what Pennsylvanians have done is reject extremism. They rejected extremism in the race for governor, in the race for U.S. Senate, and in the race when Donald Trump was running for re-election. Pennsylvanians don't value extremism. What Pennsylvanians value are common sense politicians who are willing to work with people on both sides of the aisle to get stuff done. And that, in this race, is Kamala Harris.
I want to ask you about the issue of reproductive rights and abortion. And in 2022, it was a very potent issue across the country, certainly in Pennsylvania. I interviewed women in Bucks County, of course, for people watching that haven't been there, a key collar county where Democrats have seen a lot of pickup from maybe Republicans who developed a distaste for Trump. And those women, Governor, were saying they were going to vote on that issue alone. Now, that was 2 years ago. Do you think that that issue remains such a potent driver in this election 2 years on?
I do think rights and freedoms are on the ballot, and I think it's very much on people's minds, along with other issues, including the economy, certainly. Rights and freedoms are on the line, and Donald Trump has a proven track record of ripping away people's rights and freedoms, and a blueprint in this Project 2025 for how to limit people's freedoms even more going forward. Look, Jessica, Lori and I are blessed with 4 children. Our oldest is our daughter. Our daughter, Sophia, was born into this world with more rights than she has today simply because Donald Trump was president of the United States. He bragged about how he ripped away the freedom for women to just simply be able to make decisions over their own bodies, to start a family on their own timeline and their own terms, to have a full range of medical care across this country. That is something that people have rejected time and time again in elections. We've seen that in Pennsylvania, and I believe it will continue to be a motivating issue, and people will reject the candidate, in this case Donald Trump, who wants to further restrict and limit our freedoms.
We have seen Elon Musk become quite the Trump surrogate. He has become hyper-focused on Pennsylvania, telling Pennsylvanians at the Butler rally that Harris and Walz will take away guns, take away their right to free speech, things that they have not shown that they want to do. But why do you think that message is resonating with so many Pennsylvania voters? And how do you push back against that if you're Harris and in your role as a surrogate for her?
Well, look, I think if you look at the people lining up to be surrogates for Kamala Harris, it's far more plentiful, far more numbers out there to support Kamala Harris. You've got Democrats, business leaders, military leaders, former Republicans who are able to fill rooms, even if Kamala Harris is not there in Pennsylvania, to let people know what is at stake and why they should rally around Kamala Harris. So, look, I'll take our surrogate game against the other side 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. I think it is critically important that we continue to bring more people into the fold, to reach across the aisle and bring more people into the conversation. And that's what the surrogates for Harris and Walz are doing.
But respectfully, Governor, this is somebody that has seemingly endless resources. He wants to pour a lot of them into Pennsylvania. Do you think that's something that can be effective?
He certainly has endless resources, but understand Kamala Harris has outraised Donald Trump. She has plenty of resources to be able to communicate her message. I'm not trying to downplay the reach and the power that Elon Musk has by any stretch. I'm just trying to make the point that there are a whole lot of folks on the side of Harris and Walz who have the ability to go out and bring different people into the conversation and be out there stumping for her when she's not able to be there. It's one of the reasons why Gretchen Whitmer, Tony Evers, and I are doing this Blue Wall bus tour over the course of the next week or so between Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the 3 governors of those states, making sure we're making clear to our respective constituents just how critically important this election is and why we need a partner in Kamala Harris in the White House so we can continue to make the progress we're making in our respective states.